Hello, everybody, and welcome to the short review of Guardians of the Galaxy 3. Just saw the film last night, Friday, around 6:15, and wanted to give my initial thoughts, impressions of it. So in regards to Guardians 3, it was really one of the only Marvel-based films I was looking forward to. Like that, plus Across the Spider-Verse, which comes out next month, and then Deadpool 3 are really the only Marvel films that I'm legitimately interested in. The other Marvel properties that have been announced and things, I just not interested anymore. I just have, I guess, Marvel fatigue. But Guardians was one I was actually looking forward to because I really like the Guardian films. In terms of the first Guardians film, that was a really big surprise to me when it first came out because I watched that when I was, I think, he was 14 or 15 years old when we watched that. I went to go see it with a few friends, and we kind of didn't know what to expect, but by the end of it, we were really, happy. We thought it was funny, we thought it was interesting, it was memorable, and really surprised by this. Nobody ever heard of the Guardians, and now they're kind of a household name in the same way Iron Man has become a household name thanks to the MCU and the Iron Man movies. And also the same with the second one. Second one also was pretty fun, enjoyable, and had the same Guardians feel. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and give my thoughts on it real quick. So I liked it overall. I thought it was fairly good, enjoyable. It had the heart of Guardians, had the good characters, the good chemistry. So I'm going to go ahead and get into it, and this is going to be now spoilers. So if you do not want any spoilers, go ahead and click off now and come back after you see the movie. Right, so initial thoughts. What I liked about the film. Well, like I said, it had the special Guardians kind of chemistry and vibe that the past two Guardians films has. You know, the Guardians kind of stand out in the MCU and have a special kind of bond and chemistry that is unique to them, and that's pretty much present here as well, as was expected to, because James Gunn seems to really know how to write that kind of camaraderie with characters. You know, James Gunn's comedic and unique kind of touch and fingerprints, you can tell, are on this movie. Performances were also good as well. You know, Chris Pratt and I think Rocket stole the show in terms of their performances / their story, which we'll get more into. But pretty much the acting overall was just very good. There was not a really bad performance. There were some performances that may be a little weaker than others, but I don't think there was really a bad performance in this movie. In terms of this movie, I really liked how they dove into Rocket Raccoon's past and how it intertwined with the current plot line. I like it how it kind of develops him a little more. And also in regards to the backstory of Rocket, it gives time to the villain, which was something else that I think stood out about this film. In terms of all three Guardians movies, I think this one may have the most outstanding villain. Because with the first Guardians movie, it was Ronan, and he kind of was there, but I don't think Ronan was really like a strong suite of the movie and kind of just there. The second one had a slightly stronger villain, but I didn't find him as interesting as most people. This villain in the third film was definitely one of the more interesting aspects of it. He was menacing, he was threatening, and the backstory, I think, was necessary, because I sometimes see some critiques or complaints from some people seeing this movie, that they found it just not needed. But I think in fact it was needed, because it not only gives a little glimpse into Rocket's past, but I think more importantly, it kind of sets up the villain's motivation and why he wants Rocket so badly. Because the motivation of the High Evolutionary is basically to make the perfect society, the perfect species, one that is, make them happier, make them not have to need as much nutrients or calories, where there's no crime, no bigotry, no hatred, all that stuff. He wants to make the perfect society. And in terms of Rocket, he developed him, but Rocket grew smarter and was able to figure out things that he couldn't figure out, and he got jealous of that. And that's why he's wanting to go after Rocket, because he wants his brain. So I think that past backstory, those backstory scenes with Rocket were necessary, mostly to set up the villain's motivation. Otherwise, I think without it, it would have been just another, he wants Rocket so bad, but for what reason? If they never really dove into that, then he's just he just wants Rocket because. And the villain also is a bit menacing in terms of this thing, and he has some pretty good lines as well. I think my favorite line from the villain of the movie is where he says, "There is no God. That is why I intervened." He's basically saying the universe is not perfect. It's chaotic. It's mean, and I'm here to fix that. There's a lot of other memorable, strong emotional moments too. When Chris Pratt and Rocket, like I said, were some of the standout characters of the film. Their acting is great, and also with Rocket in the scene where he looks like he's going to die, Quill is just panicking, screaming, and it's no, I'm not going to lose another friend. I'm not going to lose any more of my family. There's also some pretty solid action in the film as well. Particularly what I remember is that hallway fight scene on the red ship, the High Evolutionary ship, where it's kind of that one cut seeing what all the Guardians kind of reminds me a little bit about that action scene from the original Kingsman in the church. It's a similar vibe. And I like how the story is set up. I like how the fact the story is set up, basically they're trying to save Rocket for pretty much half, if not more than half of the movie. Because Rocket initially in the beginning gets injured when Adam Warlock comes and, they fight and Adam Warlock blasts him and injures Rocket to a point where his life's in danger, but they can't really operate on Rocket because he still has tech inside him, including on his heart, that prevents any kind of medical stuff from working that the High Evolutionary put on him. I like it because it kind of gave stakes to the story. It was like stakes, like we're losing our friend, he's dying, we have to save him. And I like how the past and the present kind of intertwine and how they come together, where Rocket has to face his past, not in a very forceful way, but in more kind of a more flowy way. And it has the Guardians' humor as well, as you expected. It's pretty much prevalent in there. Now, the film is not perfect. In terms of this film, there are some criticisms and complaints I have. Particularly starting, I would say, in regards to the plotline with Gamora and Chris Pratt, because in terms of this movie, in case you're not aware, this Gamora is not the same Gamora, because that Gamora sadly died in Infinity War when Thanos threw her off the cliff. And this Gamora is one from the past before she met the Guardians. Because this film is basically setting up a plotline like Pratt is missing Gamora, and then when she comes in, they just basically have conflict. He's like, I am not that Gamora, I can't be that Gamora. And he's like, you are that Gamora. It's just not as intriguing or as involving as like the trailer set it to be. Because the trailers kind of set it up to where it's going to be like one of the main plot lines, and it kind of is, but also kind of is not. It's not really the main focus. The main focus of the story is saving Rocket and Rocket's history. This here is just kind of a secondary plotline that isn't as focused as much, and it doesn't really have much of a resolution, or at least as satisfying of a resolution once it all comes to end. Because it mostly ends with just Gamora kind of leaving, but being a bit like, you're all right, Quill. But I also like that because it ends on a bittersweet note, because I think it would have been a little cliched or just kind of predictable if, like, Gamora just ended up with the Guardians, like, all happy and the way it was again. And I don't think it would have made as much sense either. At the same time, it's kind of like, yes, I do like how they leave it where she goes back with the Ravengers, kind of bittersweet, I think that in terms, I like what they did, but I think the plotline maybe either needed to have more of an involvement or have a stronger resolution by the end of it. One way I think they could have maybe made the plotline more entitled with the plotline of Rocket is that when Rocket is dying and like it looks like he's going to die, Quill can be like, I'm not going to lose Rocket the same way I lost Gamora. I'm not going to lose another one of my family. They could have tied that in maybe a little better. Or they could have interwoven those plot lines and had them stitched together, because they kind of both deal with the same thing. Peter's having the conflict with Gamora because it's not the same Gamora, and she's kind of basically still dead, while Rocket's dying, and then basically when Rocket's dying, he's so motivated to save him because he doesn't want to have another experience like he did with Gamora. Another problem I have is some of the jokes didn't work. Some of the jokes were pretty funny, but a decent amount of them were either too long, too obvious, or just kind of fell flat, like, for example, there's the joke where, and this is actually a clip you can find online, is where, like, it's the private channel thing with the colored buttons, and they're like, oh, red is green and green is blue, and that stuff. It kind of just, it goes on for too long and kind of just fell flat. There's also a lot of obvious jokes that I saw coming, such as when they putting, like, the spacesuits up to hide them in that little container, like, it's going to go to space, or it's a toilet and it's going to get flushed down, and that's exactly what happens. It's very predictable. And also a lot of the jokes, like, going on for too long, like, there's this one where Drax is giving Peter a metaphor, and he starts to go on for too long, and then basically it leads to like a poop joke, and it goes on for too long. It's just like, we get it. Another thing is I wish that the the villain made more of an impact on the Guardians, in terms of, like, there's the planet, the Counter-Earth, that basically explodes. Like, he destroys that entire planet, and the Guardians kind of don't really react to it. I was expecting them to be like, holy cow, he just destroyed an entire planet. Like, this is serious business, we have to stop him, and there's not really a scene like that. I feel like the Guardians would take it more seriously, or like this should be addressed in the fact, like, he just blew up a planet and killed billions of people. Like, this is something we have to take seriously. He needs to be stopped. Other thing is Adam Warlock, if he's in this movie, because he was set up in Guardians 2. He's not really in it much, and he's not really much of a character. He's comedic relief. He's comic relief. He's kind of in it for maybe 20, 25 minutes, I would say. And really the biggest thing he serves is setting up the initial plot, because he's the one who injures Rocket and sends the Guardians on their adventure to save him. But other than that, he's just kind of in the movie here and there as comic relief. And by the end, he kind of joins the Guardians crew. Other than that, he's not much. They kind of set him up that he was going to be a bigger villain based on the post-credit scene in the second Guardians movie, but no, he's not really in it much, and he's just comic relief. There's not much to him. Lastly, other thing is that a lot of the character arcs and stuff felt kind of fine. They didn't feel like good. It just felt kind of fine. I need to think more about it, honestly, but I think kind of the plot lines with each of the characters, each one had an arc and each one was mostly satisfied, but I feel like maybe it wasn't as strong as it could be as well. I think the strongest one was Rocket's and Quill's arc. The other ones kind of had just an okay arc, but at least it's better than either no arc or a bad arc. So yeah, I think those are my overall thoughts on the Guardians movie. I don't want to get this recording to go on for too much longer, so I think I'm going to start closing it out here. Yeah, I would recommend it overall. If you like the first two Guardians movie and like this crew, I think this movie will pretty much satisfy that. In terms of the other Guardians films, I think this might be my least favorite. I'll have to rewatch it to be certain, and I haven't seen the other two in quite a while. I think the first Guardians film is still my favorite of the three, but it's still good enough to be worthy of the Guardians name, and I think it's a satisfying end to the Guardians trilogy, and should leave it there. I don't want them to butcher the Guardians like they do a lot of their other stuff. So yeah, I recommend it overall, and think that if you're interested in seeing it, go ahead and go see it. So anyway, I think that pretty much wraps this up. So thank you very much for watching this video, listening to me talk about my initial thoughts, impressions on Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. And as always, I'll see you in the next one. Take care.